You are standing on the edge of a vast, uncrossable sea. The wind is whipping your face. Behind you, the terrifying rhythmic thud of 600 chosen chariots is shaking the earth. There is no escape. No boats, no bridge, nowhere to run. Your heart hammers against your ribs as panic ripples through the crowd around you. And then a man steps forward, raises his hand, and tells you to stand still. He tells you to watch, because the water in front of you is about to tear itself in half.
It is, it's just the ultimate moment of being entirely trapped, only to witness the impossible actually become reality.
Welcome to this deep dive into our source material. Today we are exploring one of the most foundational ancient texts in human history.
Right, the book of Exodus, specifically chapters 1 through 40.
Exactly. And we're looking at the original text alongside a really fascinating companion theological commentary, one that breaks down the profound spiritual, psychological, and historical significance of this narrative.
And we're going to assume you already know the basic Sunday school version of this story.
Oh, for sure. We aren't just here to recount a plot you've heard 100 times. We are here to pull out the hidden depths, the cultural context, and the incredible human psychology embedded right here in these pages.
Yeah, our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We want to trace the ultimate journey from bondage to glory.
Bondage to glory. I love it.
We're looking at how a nation of enslaved people is forged in the crucible of Egypt, delivered by this astonishing display of cosmic power, and then
completely transformed in a desolate wilderness into a people who literally build a dwelling place for the divine. So frame this not as some dusty history lesson, but as a gripping, gritty narrative.
yeah, this is a story of survival.
It's about divine power colliding with human arrogance. It holds a mirror up to our own lives, our own struggles with anxiety, our own search for freedom. It's about how an oppressed people navigate the darkest of times and how deliverance often comes in ways no one could ever predict. Okay, so let's unpack this. We begin with the crucible of Egypt and the hidden preparation of a deliverer. The text starts by setting this drastic, chilling scene.
A huge shift in the political climate.
Right. The descendants of Jacob, who originally came to Egypt as a small family of just 70 souls, have multiplied massively. They went from being honored guests during Joseph's era to becoming basically a perceived national security threat.
And the text says, a new king arose who knew not Joseph.
That phrase, knew not Joseph, is so incredibly loaded.
It really is. I mean, it represents a complete intentional erasure of history and gratitude. Joseph had literally saved Egypt from a catastrophic famine generations prior.
He saved the whole empire.
Exactly. But for this new Pharaoh, history is rewritten to serve his political paranoia. What began as a season of immense favor has turned into a nightmare of state-sponsored bondage.
And what's fascinating here is the deep irony highlighted in our sources.
The irony is rich, yeah.
Pharaoh looks at the children of Israel, sees that they are fruitful and increased abundantly, and he is gripped by fear. He says to his advisors, "Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass, that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies."
So he tries to control what he fears through harsh, systematic oppression.
And it is utterly brutal. They set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. The text specifically notes they built treasure cities for Pharaoh, Pithom, and Ramses.
The Egyptians made them serve with rigor, making their lives bitter with hard bondage.
In mortar, in brick, and in all kinds of service in the field.
But here is the incredible twist. The exact opposite of Pharaoh's plan happens.
Yes. The text tells us, but the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew.
I love that detail.
It's like trying to put out a grease fire with water. You only make it explode.
It is a profound paradox. The commentary points out a major theological truth here, which is that oppression cannot cancel divine promise.
Oh, that's good.
Pharaoh has all the earthly power, right? He has the taskmasters, the whips, the mortar, the bricks. He has the entire military-industrial complex of the ancient world.
The superpower of the year.
Exactly. But he is fighting against a divine covenant made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob centuries earlier. A promise of multiplication. Earthly tyranny simply cannot suffocate heaven's blueprint.
The more you squeeze, the more they expand.
Right. But Pharaoh doesn't look at this and think, maybe I should back off.
No, he just escalates the cruelty.
He speaks to the Hebrew midwives, 2 women named Shiphrah and Puah, and he issues a horrifying decree.
When you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, if it is a son, you must kill him. If it's a daughter, she can live. This is state-sponsored extermination targeting the newborn males.
And this brings us to one of the most powerful acts of civil disobedience in all of ancient literature.
Shifra and Pur.
Yeah, these two women are essentially given a royal mandate to commit genocide. The text says, "But the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the commentary emphasizes that these women feared God more than they feared the most powerful dictator on the planet.
Which introduces a major recurring theme in this text, the fear of God versus the fear of man.
Right.
When your reverence for the divine outweighs your terror of earthly consequences, you become capable of immense courage.
And Pharaoh doesn't just let it slide. He calls them into his court and demands to know why they are saving the male children.
And the midwives, showing incredible shrewdness.
And honestly, some serious nerve.
Right. They tell Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered before the midwives even get to them.
They basically say, hey, we're trying, but these women are just too quick.
And the result? God dealt well with the midwives. The people continued to multiply. And because these midwives feared God, the text says he blessed them with their own families and legacies.
But Pharaoh's paranoia has now morphed into outright terror. It leads to a public decree to all his people, not just the midwives. He commands that every son that is born must be cast into the river.
The river Nile.
Right. The source of Egypt's life and prosperity suddenly turned into an instrument of mass death.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the birth of Moses.
A woman of the house of Levi has a son. She sees he's a beautiful child and manages to hide him for 3 months.
But, babies cry, babies grow.
When she can no longer hide him, she does something completely desperate. She takes an ark made of bulrushes, coats it with slime and pitch to waterproof it, puts the child inside, and lays it in the reeds by the river's brink.
The irony here is absolutely breathtaking.
Oh, so.
Well, Pharaoh commanded that the male babies be thrown into the river to drown. Moses' mother technically obeys the letter of the law. She puts them in the river, but she provides a miniature ark of salvation.
Oh, wow.
The Hebrew word used for this basket is teba, which is the exact same word used for Noah's Ark. Yeah, it is a vessel of preservation in a flood of judgment. Moses is saved in the very waters Pharaoh weaponized.
And the irony just keeps compounding. His older sister Miriam stands far off to watch what happens. And who comes down to the river to wash?
Pharaoh's own daughter.
She sees the basket, sends her maid to fetch it, and opens it. The baby is crying, and she has compassion on him. She knows instantly this is one of the Hebrews' children.
And Miriam, showing serious quick thinking, steps out of the reeds.
She just walks right up.
She asks, "Shall I go and call a nurse of the Hebrew women for you?" Pharaoh's daughter says yes, and Miriam fetches Moses' own mother.
It's amazing. Pharaoh's daughter actually pays Moses' mother wages to nurse her own child.
It is divine comedy at its finest. Pharaoh is literally paying to nurse and raise the very child who will grow up to dismantle his entire empire.
The child grows, is brought back to Pharaoh's daughter, and becomes her adopted son. She names him Moses, which means drawn out, because she drew him out of the water.
So the future deliverer of the slaves is raised in the absolute epicenter of Egyptian power, educated in all the wisdom of Egypt.
But he doesn't forget who he is. Fast forward, Moses is grown. He goes out to his brethren and looks on their burdens. He sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew. He looks this way and that, sees no one watching, kills the Egyptian, and hides the body in the sand.
A rash act of vigilante justice.
Right. But the next day, he tries to break up a fight between two Hebrews, and one of them snaps at him. Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?
Moses suddenly realizes the secret is out.
Pharaoh hears about it and seeks to execute him. Moses has to run for his life out into the desolate land of Midian.
This flight to Midian is a crucial psychological breaking point. Moses goes from the palace to the pasture.
He sits down by a well. He helps the 7 daughters of Jethro, a priest of Midian, watering their flock and protecting them from aggressive shepherds.
He's taken to their home, marries a woman named Zipporah, and has a son. He names the boy Gershom, declaring, "I've been a stranger in a strange land."
For 40 long years, Moses lives as a humble shepherd.
To the world, he is completely hidden. He has been, entirely forgotten. He went from being a prince of Egypt with the world at his fingertips to a shepherd staring at sheep in a desolate wilderness.
40 years is a lifetime. You have to imagine he thought his life was over, that he had completely blown his chance to help his people.
But the commentary emphasizes that this is divine providence at work in hidden seasons. God is stripping away the arrogance of the Egyptian prince to forge the humility of a shepherd.
Meanwhile, back in Egypt, the king dies, but the bondage only worsens. The children of Israel sigh, they cry out, and their cry reaches heaven.
And the text notes 4 crucial, beautiful divine actions here. It says, God heard their groaning. God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them.
Heard, remembered, looked, respected.
Those 4 verbs are the turning point of human history. The commentary notes a profound theological principle here. Deliverance begins in heaven before it ever materializes on earth.
The people are still in chains, the mortar is still heavy, their backs are still bleeding from the whips, but the wheels of cosmic justice have already begun to turn.
God's silence during those 400 years was not absence.
That brings us to Moses at the mountain and this incredibly famous encounter. Moses is out keeping the flock of his father-in-law, leading them to the backside of the desert, to the mountain of God, Horeb.
And he sees a sight that defies all physics.
An angel of the Lord appears in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. The bush burns with fire, but it is not consumed.
And we shouldn't picture a massive, majestic cedar tree here. It's a scrub brush, a common dry thorn bush of the desert. It's a mundane object.
But it's not just a spectacle to grab his attention.
No, it's a profound revelation of God's nature. A fire that burns without needing fuel, a fire that gives off heat and light, but does not destroy the fragile vessel holding it. Moses turns aside to see this great sight, and God calls out to him from the midst of the bush, "Moses, Moses."
Moses answers, "Here am I." And God tells him, "Stop right there, take off your shoes, for the place where you are standing is holy ground."
I've always found that fascinating. The dirt itself isn't special. God's very presence is what sanctifies the dirt of the desert.
Precisely. The ground isn't intrinsically holy, it is made holy by the presence of the Creator. It's a boundary of reverence.
God announces himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses hides his face in terror. And then God speaks words of profound comfort and intent. I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and I am come down to deliver them.
Notice the initiative. Salvation here is a purely divine initiative. God has seen, and God is coming down to act.
And here is the kicker. He's using Moses to do it.
God says, "Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people."
And Moses basically has an absolute panic attack.
The man who tried to save his people 40 years ago with his own sword is now completely terrified of the job. He immediately throws up a wall of excuses. First, it's total inadequacy. Who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh?
And note how God answers that human inadequacy. If this were a modern leadership seminar, God would give Moses a pep talk. He'd say, "Moses, look at your resume. You have royal Egyptian training. You understand their court etiquette. You can do this."
But God doesn't do that.
God's answer to human weakness isn't to bolster human self-esteem. It's the promise of divine presence. He simply says, "Certainly I will be with thee." The focus shifts entirely from who is Moses to who is with Moses.
But Moses isn't finished making excuses. He asks the ultimate theological question. Okay, let's say I go to the children of Israel and I say, "The God of your fathers sent me." And they say to me, "What is his name?" What am I supposed to say to them?
What's fascinating here is the sheer linguistic and theological weight of God's response. Our sources spend a lot of time on this.
God says unto Moses, "I am that I am."
In Hebrew, it's Erasure Aya. He instructs Moses to say, "I am has sent me unto you."
In the ancient world, gods were defined by their domains, right? The god of the river, the god of the sun, the god of the harvest.
Exactly. A name defined your limits. But God doesn't give a name like that. He gives a verb. He is revealing his self-existence, his eternality, and his unchanging being.
Everything else in the universe, you, me, the stars, the mountains, is dependent on something else to exist. God is not. He is uncaused.
He is not defined by circumstances, past or future. He simply is. The commentary points out that this name signifies a God who is ever-present, eternally active, and inherently faithful to his own nature.
But Moses is still terrified of rejection. He's thinking practically. He says, "But behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice. They're going to say, 'The Lord has not appeared to you.'"
So God gives him visual aids. He asks Moses, "What is that in your hand?" Moses says, "A rod, a basic shepherd's staff."
God tells him to throw it on the ground, and it turns into a serpent so terrifying that Moses actually runs away from it.
Then God tells him to grab it by the tail, which, by the way, is the absolute worst way to grab a snake.
Truly terrible advice under normal circumstances.
Exactly. But he does it, and it becomes a rod again. Then God tells him to put his hand inside his cloak. He pulls it out, and it's leprous, diseased, white as snow. He puts it back in, and it's completely healed.
And a third sign, if they still don't believe, take river water and pour it on dry land, and it will turn to blood.
The profound takeaway here is that weakness becomes an instrument. A dead, wooden shepherd's staff is transformed into the rod of God. God takes whatever is already in our hand and empowers it.
But even with these miraculous signs, Moses is still dragging his feet. He claims he is not eloquent, that he is slow of speech and of a slow tongue.
Some scholars think he had a stutter or a speech impediment, while others think he was just terrified of public speaking after 40 years of only talking to sheep.
And God pushes back hard. I love this exchange. God says, "Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the dumb, or deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say."
But Moses basically says, please just send someone else.
And the text says the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. God concedes to send Aaron, Moses' older brother, the Levite, to be the spokesman. Aaron will be to Moses instead of a mouth, and Moses will be to Aaron instead of God.
So Moses finally relents. He returns to his father-in-law Jethro, gets permission to leave, packs up his wife Zipporah and his sons, and heads back to Egypt with the rod of God in his hand.
But on the journey, there is this fascinating, deeply mysterious, and honestly bizarre moment at an inn.
Very strange text.
The text says the Lord met Moses and sought to kill him, seemingly because Moses had failed to circumcise his son, a direct violation of the Abrahamic covenant.
Right, and Zipporah, acting quickly, takes a sharp stone, circumcises her son, and casts the foreskin at Moses' feet, calling him a bloody husband.
It's such a jarring story right in the middle of a road trip. Why is that there?
The commentary explains that it shows a vital spiritual principle. Moses himself must be in strict obedience to the covenant before he can lead the covenant people.
Ah, I see.
He cannot go to Pharaoh and demand obedience to God if his own house is in direct rebellion against God's explicit commands. He is not exempt from the law he is about to administer. It's a terrifying reminder of God's holiness.
Okay, so they survived that. Moses meets Aaron in the wilderness at the mountain of God. They gather the elders of Israel. Aaron speaks the words, does the signs with the rod, and the people believe.
The text says, when they heard that the Lord had visited them and looked upon their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshipped.
It's this beautiful moment of hope. But this initial hope is about to smash into a massive brick wall, because taking on the Egyptian empire is not going to be easy.
Exactly. Moses and Aaron walk right into the court of Pharaoh, the most powerful man on earth, a man considered a living God. They deliver the message, "Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness."
And Pharaoh's response is dripping with sheer, unadulterated arrogance. He says, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go."
And he doesn't just say no. He actively punishes the Israelites for even having the audacity to ask. He commands his taskmasters to stop giving the people straw to make bricks.
To give some context, straw was an essential binding agent for ancient mud bricks. Without it, the bricks crumble.
Right. So now the Israelites have to go scour the entire land of Egypt to gather stubble instead of straw, but their daily quota of bricks remains exactly the same.
It is an impossible task designed to break their spirits completely. The people fail to meet the quota, their foremen are beaten, and immediately the Israelites turn on Moses and Aaron.
They literally say, "You have made us a stench in the eyes of Pharaoh." They blame Moses for making them a target.
Moses is heartbroken and confused. He goes back to God and asks, "Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Why did you even send me? Since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered them at all."
It's a profound crisis of faith right out of the gate. Moses expected a quick victory.
But God reassures him, reminding him of the covenant, declaring, "I am the Lord," and promising to redeem them with a stretched out arm and with great judgments.
But honestly, looking at this from a modern perspective, the text repeatedly says, God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Feels a bit unfair, right? Why punish him if his heart is being hardened for him?
That is one of the most heavily debated theological questions in Exodus. The commentary we are using offers a crucial nuance.
What does it say?
If you track the narrative carefully, during the first several plagues, the text explicitly says that Pharaoh hardened his own heart. He acts out of his own pride, his own economic interest in slave labor, and his own arrogance.
Okay, that makes sense.
It is only after Pharaoh has repeatedly, stubbornly hardened his own heart against overwhelming evidence that the text shifts and says, "And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh."
So it is a concept of divine confirmation.
Yes. God essentially says, if you are absolutely determined to be stubborn and resist me, I will solidify you in that choice. And I will use your very stubbornness as a canvas to display my absolute sovereignty to the world. God uses Pharaoh's self-chosen rebellion to declare his own glory.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not God overriding a willing man. It's God handing a stubborn man over to his own destructive choices.
Exactly. So God tells Moses that he will multiply his signs and wonders. And this begins the terrifying answer to Pharaoh's arrogant question, who is the Lord?
Moses and Aaron return to Pharaoh. Aaron throws down his rod, and it becomes a serpent. Pharaoh, entirely unimpressed, calls his own magicians and sorcerers, and they do the same with their dark enchantments.
But Aaron's rod swallows up their rods. Yet Pharaoh's heart remains hard.
And so begins the plagues. And we really have to stop here and emphasize that these plagues aren't just random, chaotic, magical attacks.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
As the commentary notes, they systematically deconstruct the entire religious system of Egypt. Egypt worshipped a pantheon of gods tied to nature. The plagues are a theological war, proving that the God of Israel has total sovereignty over the domains the Egyptians thought their gods controlled.
Let's walk through this horrifying escalation because it is psychological warfare. First, the water turns to blood. Aaron stretches out his rod over the waters of Egypt, the streams, the rivers, the ponds. The entire Nile turns to blood. The fish die, the river stinks, the Egyptians cannot drink the water. For 7 days, the lifeblood of Egypt is literal blood.
This is a direct strike against Hapi, the Egyptian god of the Nile, who is considered the bringer of life and fertility. God turns their source of life into a giant river of death.
But the magicians manage to replicate it on a small scale, and Pharaoh turns away.
Next comes the plague of frogs. They come out of the river abundantly. They go into the houses, the bedchambers upon the beds, into the ovens, and into the kneading bowls.
Imagine the sheer psychological terror of that invasion. You can't sleep, you can't walk, you can't bake bread without squishing a frog.
And historically, the frog was the symbol of Heket, the Egyptian goddess of fertility and childbirth. She was depicted with the head of a frog. By making the frogs a plague, God is turning their own sacred symbol into a stinking, unavoidable nuisance.
Pharaoh actually breaks a sweat here. He asks Moses to pray to the Lord to take them away, promising to let the people go. Moses does, the frogs die in massive heaps, and the land literally reeks of rotting frogs. But the moment Pharaoh sees there is a respite, he hardens his heart again and breaks his word.
Then comes the lice. Aaron strikes the dust of the earth, and all the dust becomes lice upon man and beast.
Yeah.
Here is a massive turning point.
Yeah.
And the magicians try to replicate this with their secret arts, but they cannot.
The magicians actually say to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. Even the occult masters of Egypt, the most powerful sorcerers of the ancient world, recognize they are entirely outmatched.
But Pharaoh's heart remains hard. So God sends swarms of flies, corrupting the land. But this time, God explicitly severs the land of Goshen, where the Israelites live, so no flies are there. God is drawing a sharp line in the sand between his people and Pharaoh's people.
Pharaoh tries to negotiate. He's looking for a compromise. He says, go ahead and sacrifice to your God, but do it here in the land of Egypt.
Moses refuses. He says, we must go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, because the animals we sacrifice, like sheep and cattle, are considered sacred to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice them here, your people will stone us.
Pharaoh agrees to let them go into the wilderness. Moses prays. The flies leave, not one remains. And again, surprise, surprise, Pharaoh hardens his heart and breaks his word.
The devastation just keeps escalating. The 5th plague is a grievous disease, a pestilence upon the livestock. The horses, donkeys, camels, oxen, and sheep of Egypt all die in massive numbers. But of the cattle of Israel, not one dies.
Pharaoh sends investigators, finds out that Israel's livestock is perfectly fine, but his pride won't let him bend.
The 6th plague, boils. Moses takes soot from a furnace, throws it into the air, and it becomes a festering boil breaking out on man and beast. The magicians can't even stand before Moses because the boils are upon them.
This is an attack on Imhotep, the god of medicine, and Sekhmet, the goddess with the power to heal diseases. They are utterly powerless to stop this outbreak, and this is where the text explicitly states for the first time. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh. God is confirming his stubbornness.
Then comes the 7th plague, fire and hail. A very grievous hail, mingled with fire flashing back and forth along the ground, unlike anything Egypt had ever seen since it became a nation. It smashes every plant of the field and shatters every tree. Again, Goshen is completely spared.
Pharaoh calls for Moses and Aaron and says something shocking. I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked.
It sounds like a breakthrough, doesn't it? But as the commentary points out, this isn't true repentance. It's the panic of consequence. He is sorry, he's experiencing pain, not sorry for his sin. As soon as Moses prays and the terrifying thunder and hail cease, Pharaoh sins yet more and hardens his heart.
So the eighth plague arrives. Locusts. An apocalyptic swarm. They cover the face of the earth so that the ground is black with them. They eat every green thing the hail left behind. The agricultural devastation is total.
Pharaoh begs for forgiveness only this once. God sends a strong west wind and blows the locusts into the Red Sea, but the heart remains hard.
Then the ninth plague, darkness. A thick darkness over all the land of Egypt for 3 solid days. The text describes it as a darkness which may be felt. Have you ever been in a cavern when they turn the lights off? That suffocating sensory deprivation darkness?
They couldn't see one another, and no one left their house for 3 days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings.
This is perhaps the greatest insult to the Egyptian religious system. The supreme deity of Egypt was Ra, the sun god. Pharaoh himself was considered the incarnation of Ra. By plunging the empire into tangible darkness for 3 days, the God of Israel is stating unequivocally, I control the sun. Your supreme God is absolutely nothing before me.
Pharaoh tries one last desperate negotiation. Go, serve the Lord, just leave your flocks and your herds here. He wants to keep their wealth hostage.
Moses refuses, and not a hoof will be left behind. Pharaoh flies into a blind rage and threatens Moses, get away from me, take heed to yourself, see my face no more, for in the day you see my face, you shall die.
Moses calmly replies, You have spoken well, I will see your face again no more. The lines are permanently drawn, the showdown is over, the ultimate judgment is imminent.
And that takes us directly into the Passover and the parting of the sea. God tells Moses he will bring one final catastrophic plague upon Egypt, and after this, Pharaoh won't just let them go, he will literally thrust them out.
God commands the Israelites to ask their Egyptian neighbors for jewels of silver and gold. The Egyptians are so completely broken and terrified of the Israelites' God that they freely hand over their wealth, fulfilling God's ancient promise to Abraham that they would not leave empty-handed.
But the final plague is utterly devastating. About midnight, the Lord will go out into the midst of Egypt, and every firstborn in the land will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on his throne to the firstborn of the captive in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of livestock.
To protect his people from this sweeping judgment, God institutes the Passover. And the instructions in Exodus 12 are incredibly specific and loaded with immense theological meaning. On the 10th day of the month, every household must take a male lamb of the first year, completely without blemish or defect.
They keep it until the 14th day, and the whole assembly kills it at twilight. They must take the blood of that lamb and smear it on the 2 side posts and on the upper doorpost of the houses.
They are told to roast the flesh with fire and eat it that night along with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. And they have to eat it like they are ready to run, with their belts fastened, their sandals on their feet, and their staff in their hand.
God says, For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all firstborn. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you.
The commentary dives deeply into what we call the Christological reflection here. For those unfamiliar with the term, it means looking at how this Old Testament event foreshadows the life and sacrifice of Jesus in the New Testament.
The Passover lamb perfectly prefigures Christ. Think about the mechanics of salvation here. Deliverance in this narrative does not come by ancestry. Simply being biologically Hebrew wasn't enough to save your firstborn. If a Hebrew didn't put the blood on the door, their firstborn died just like the Egyptians.
Deliverance doesn't come by human effort, moral superiority, or good deeds. It comes exclusively by blood and substitution. The innocent lamb dies so the firstborn can live. The judgment of God falls on the lamb instead of the family.
When God sees the blood, he passes over. Salvation requires an act of obedience rooted entirely in faith.
And at midnight, the unthinkable happens. The Lord strikes down all the firstborn in Egypt. Pharaoh rises up in the night, and there is a great piercing cry across the entire nation, for there was not a single Egyptian house where there was not someone dead.
Pharaoh summons Moses and Aaron in the middle of the night and tells them to get out. Take your flocks, your herds, and be gone. And bless me also. The Egyptian citizens are practically shoving the Israelites out the door in panic, shouting, We will all be dead men.
The Israelites take their bread dough before it even has time to rise, bind up their kneading bowls in their clothes, take the silver and gold, and they march out. 600,000 men on foot, plus women, children, and a mixed multitude of others who joined them.
After exactly 430 years, the chains are broken. They are free.
But freedom is immediately tested. God does not lead them through the land of the Philistines, even though it was a much shorter coastal route. The commentary suggests God knew that if these newly freed slaves saw war immediately, they would panic and run right back to Egypt.
Instead, he leads them through the desolate wilderness toward the Red Sea. They carry the bones of Joseph with them, honoring an oath made centuries prior. And God doesn't just give them directions, he leads them visibly.
He goes before them by day in a massive pillar of cloud to guide their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light.
But God tells Moses to do something that tactically makes zero sense. He tells them to turn back and encamp right against the sea in a place called Pi-hahiroth. God explicitly says Pharaoh will think you are wandering aimlessly, tracked by the wilderness.
And indeed, once the shock wears off, the heart of Pharaoh and his officials turns against the people yet again. They realize they've just lost their entire slave labor force. Pharaoh readies 600 of his best elite chariots, plus all the other chariots of Egypt, his horsemen, and his entire army, and he pursues them.
He overtakes them while they are camped right up against the water. The Israelites lift their eyes, see the Egyptian war machine bearing down on them, and absolute paralyzing terror sets in.
They cry out to God, and then they immediately turn on Moses with the most brutal sarcasm. Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us out here to die in the wilderness? We told you to leave us alone. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die out here.
This is a profound, tragic moment of human psychology. It's faith in crisis. They are terrified of the unknown, and in their panic, they are actually longing for the familiarity of their bondage rather than facing the uncertainty of freedom.
Slavery was awful, but at least it was predictable.
And Moses delivers one of the most powerful, defiant commands in all of Scripture. He doesn't tell them to grab swords. He says to the people, "Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent."
Stand still. Don't fight, don't run, just watch. And what happens next is cinematic.
The angel of God and the pillar of cloud actually move from the front of the Israelite camp to the back, placing themselves directly between the Israelites and the pursuing Egyptian army. To the Egyptians, it's a cloud of pitch blackness, preventing them from advancing. But to Israel, it illuminates the night.
Then Moses stretches out his hand over the sea. The Lord drives the sea back by a strong east wind all that night, turning the seabed into dry land. The waters are literally torn in half.
The children of Israel march right into the midst of the sea on dry ground, with the waters forming massive, towering walls on their right and on their left.
It is divine intervention that completely shatters human logic. When the Egyptians see them crossing, their arrogance blinds them, and they aggressively pursue them right into the midst of the sea.
But during the morning watch, the Lord looks down on the Egyptian army through the pillar of fire and cloud and throws them into a panic. He causes their chariot wheels to swerve and bog down, so they drive heavily.
The Egyptians finally realize who they are fighting and scream, "Let's get out of here. The Lord is fighting for Israel against Egypt." But it's too late.
God tells Moses to stretch out his hand again. As the morning appears, the sea returns to its normal depth. The waters violently collapse over the chariots, the horsemen, and the entire army of Pharaoh. Not a single one of them survives.
The Israelites are standing safe on the other shore. They look back and see the bodies of the most powerful army on earth washed up on the beach. The text says they feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses.
And what follows is an incredible outpouring of relief and worship. Moses and the Israelites sing a magnificent triumphant song. "I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea."
Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, grabs a tambourine, and all the women go out after her with instruments and dancing. It is peak spiritual euphoria, the ultimate victory.
But this raises an important question. Why does victory so quickly turn into testing? Because the narrative doesn't let them celebrate for long. Literally 3 days later, they are marching through the desert of Shur, and they cannot find water. They finally arrive at a place called Marah, but the water there is bitter and undrinkable.
And instantly the dancing stops. The praise turns into bitter grumbling. They turn against Moses and demand, "What are we going to drink?"
It's actually wild. They just watched an ocean tear itself in half and swallow an empire, and a long weekend later they're convinced God brought them out there to die of thirst. But to be fair, haven't we all been there? We experience a massive breakthrough, and the very next inconvenience makes us question everything.
Moses cries out to the Lord, and God shows him a piece of wood. Moses throws it into the bitter water, and miraculously the water becomes sweet and drinkable. And right there, God establishes a principle. He says if they will diligently listen to his voice and keep his commandments, he will not put any of the diseases upon them that he brought upon the Egyptians, declaring, I am the Lord who heals you.
The commentary explains the psychology of the wilderness here. God is proving his people. He isn't testing them to destroy them or to see them fail. He is retraining them. They have the mindset of slaves who constantly fear starvation and lack.
God is intentionally putting them in situations of total dependency so they learn to trust him. They move to Elim, a beautiful oasis with 12 springs and 70 palm trees for a season of rest. But soon they move deeper into the wilderness of sin, and a new test begins: hunger.
And right on cue, the whole congregation starts murmuring again. They look back at Egypt with rose-colored glasses. They say to Moses and Aaron, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death.
So God responds. He tells Moses, I will rain bread from heaven for you. That evening, a massive flock of quail comes up and covers the camp for meat. And the next morning, when the dew evaporates, there are thin flakes on the desert floor, looking like frost.
The Israelites look at it and ask each other, what is it? Which in Hebrew sounds like manna.
Moses tells them it is the bread the Lord has given them to eat. But there are very specific, strict rules tied to this daily provision, and it's all about breaking the slave mindset. God says everyone is to gather an omer per person.
For context, an omer is roughly 2 liters, or half a gallon, just enough for one day.
And Moses commands them, do not keep any of it until morning. Think about how hard this is for a former slave. Slaves hoard food because they don't trust their masters. God is saying, you don't need to hoard. I will provide for you tomorrow, too.
Of course, some people don't listen. They try to stash it away, and by morning, it is full of maggots and smells awful. Moses is furious. They have to gather it fresh every single morning, trusting God daily. And when the sun grows hot, whatever is left on the ground melts away.
And then there's the introduction of the Sabbath rest. On the 6th day, they are told to gather twice as much, 2 omers per person. Moses explains that tomorrow is a holy Sabbath of rest to the Lord. They keep the extra manna overnight, and miraculously, this time it doesn't rot or breed worms.
On the 7th day, there is no manna in the field. Predictably, some people still go out looking for it and find nothing, prompting God to ask, how long will you refuse to keep my commandments? It's a profound retraining. Slaves work 7 days a week without rest. God is giving them back their humanity, teaching them the rhythm of divine rest and trust.
They ate this manna for 40 years until they reached the borders of Canaan.
But the physical trials aren't over. They journey to Rephidim, and once again, there is no water. The people violently confront Moses, saying, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?
Moses cries to the Lord, saying, what am I going to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me.
God tells Moses to take the elders, take the exact same staff that struck the Nile, and stand by a specific rock in Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink. Moses does it, and water gushes out. He names the place Massa, meaning testing, and Meribah, quarreling, because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not?
And immediately after this, they faced their first actual military threat as a free people. A nomadic tribe called Amalek comes and attacks Israel at Rephidim. Moses tells his young commander, Joshua, to choose men and go fight, while Moses stands on top of the hill with the staff of God.
And the dynamics of this battle are absolutely wild. As long as Moses holds up his hands with the staff, the Israelites start winning. But whenever he lowers his hands from fatigue, the Amalekites start winning.
Moses is an old man. His arms get heavy. So his brother Aaron and a man named Hur grab a stone, put it under Moses so he can sit, and they stand on either side of him, physically holding his arms up. His hands remain steady until sunset, and Joshua defeats Amalek.
Moses builds an altar and names it Jehovah Nissi, meaning, the Lord is my banner.
It's a beautiful, vivid picture of intercessory prayer and the absolute necessity of community support. Moses cannot lead alone. Even the great prophet needs his brothers to hold his arms up.
Which segues perfectly into chapter 18, where Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, comes to visit. He brings Moses' wife Zipporah and his 2 sons back to him. Moses tells Jethro everything God has done to Pharaoh, and Jethro rejoices, declaring that the Lord is greater than all gods, and he offers sacrifices.
But the very next day, Jethro observes Moses' daily routine. Moses sits as a judge for the people from morning until evening, settling every single dispute for a population of over 1 million people.
Jethro pulls his son-in-law aside and essentially gives him a masterclass in administration. He says, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone."
Jethro tells Moses to teach the people the decrees and laws, but to delegate the actual judging. He tells him to select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain.
Appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the simple cases and only bring the most difficult cases to Moses. Moses actually listens to his father-in-law, implements the system, and it saves him from total pastoral burnout.
It's a highly practical, necessary organizational shift, because what is coming next requires Moses to have a clear head. They are about to undergo the total reorganization of their entire society. This brings us to the monumental events at Mount Sinai. In the 3rd month after leaving Egypt, the children of Israel arrive at the wilderness of Sinai and camp right in front of the mountain.
And the arrival at Mount Sinai is absolutely terrifying. Moses goes up the mountain to God, and the Lord offers a conditional covenant. He says, "If you will obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation."
Moses brings this proposal to the elders, and the people answer together. All that the Lord has spoken, we will do.
God accepts their answer, but then he commands Moses to sanctify the people. They are to wash their clothes and prepare themselves for 2 days, because on the 3rd day, the Lord is going to come down in the sight of all the people.
Strict boundaries are set around the base of the mountain. Anyone who touches the mountain, whether man or animal, will be put to death. They are dealing with unshielded divine holiness, and it is lethal to the impure. On the morning of the 3rd day, there is a terrifying sensory overload.
Thunder, lightning, a thick cloud over the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast. The people in the camp tremble. Mount Sinai is completely covered in smoke because the Lord descends upon it in fire. The smoke billows up like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain shakes violently.
Out of that fire and smoke, God speaks directly to the people, giving them the 10 Commandments. And these aren't just arbitrary rules. They are the constitutional foundation of their new nation. "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet."
The people are so overwhelmed and terrified by the thunder, the lightning, the trumpet, and the smoking mountain that they back away and stand at a distance. They beg Moses, "Speak to us yourself and we will listen, but do not have God speak to us, or we will die."
Moses tells them not to be afraid, that God has come to test them, so that the fear of God will be with them to keep them from sinning. So the people remain at a distance, while Moses approaches the thick darkness where God is, to receive the highly detailed laws known as the Covenant Code.
And we really need to pause here to ensure you grasp how revolutionary these laws were. We are talking about organizing over 1 million newly freed slaves into a functioning ethical society. It covers everything. Take the limits of servitude, for example. In the ancient Near East, slavery was often permanent. But God's law says a Hebrew servant serves for 6 years, and in the 7th year, he goes free without paying anything.
It establishes consequences for violence. Anyone who strikes a man and kills him shall surely be put to death. But it carefully distinguishes between premeditated murder and accidental manslaughter, establishing cities of refuge.
And let's look at the famous eye for an eye law. People often quote eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot as proof that the Old Testament is brutal and vengeful. But when you compare this to other ancient Near Eastern laws, like the Code of Hammurabi, it's actually an incredible ethical advancement.
In Hammurabi's code, punishments were based on social class. If a noble blinded a peasant, he paid a fine. If a peasant blinded a noble, he was tortured or killed. Furthermore, human nature tends to escalate vengeance. You punch me, I burn your house down. The eye for an eye law was given to limit vengeance. It established the principle of proportional justice regardless of class. The punishment must fit the crime, no more, no less.
It also outlines complex property rights, restitution for a stolen ox or sheep, laws about fire spreading to a neighbor's field, laws about borrowing tools or animals and what happens if they are damaged or die. But crucially, it includes profound social justice mandates that were unheard of. God says, "Do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you are foreigners in Egypt. Do not take advantage of the widow or the fatherless."
God warns that if they do, he will personally hear their cry, his anger will be aroused, and he will kill the oppressors with the sword, making their own wives widows. It strictly forbids charging interest to the poor. It establishes the Sabbath year, where every seventh year the agricultural fields are left unplanted so the poor can gather whatever grows naturally.
This is a comprehensive ethical framework designed to make them a holy nation, entirely distinct from the cruelty and exploitation of Egypt.
Moses comes back down, recites all the words to the people, and they agree again. Moses writes everything down, builds an altar, sacrifices offerings, and sprinkles the blood of the covenant on the people, sealing the agreement. Then God calls Moses up into the mountain alone to receive the stone tablets containing the law and the highly specific blueprints for the tabernacle. Moses enters the cloud and is on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights.
But while Moses is up there getting the blueprints for worship, down below, the ultimate betrayal occurs. The people look up at the mountain, they see the fire, they see the smoke, but Moses doesn't come down for over a month. They start to panic. They gather around Aaron and demand, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him."
It is a stunning display of human fragility. The psychology here is critical. They are facing the anxiety of the unknown. Moses, their visible anchor, is gone. In their terror, they revert to the familiar. They want a God they can see, touch, and control. This is the essence of idolatry.
And Aaron, the guy who stood toe-to-toe with Pharaoh, just completely folds to peer pressure. He capitulates immediately. He tells them to take off the gold earrings they got from the Egyptians. He takes the gold, uses a tool to fashion it, and casts it into the shape of a calf. And the people declare, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt?"
Aaron even builds an altar in front of it and announces a festival to the Lord. They sit down to eat and drink and get up to indulge in wild revelry. It's a total, devastating breach of the very first commandments they just agreed to.
God sees exactly what is happening. He tells Moses to get down. He says, "Your people, whom you brought up out of Egypt, have become corrupt." Notice God calls them Moses' people here, distancing himself from the rebellion. God says to Moses, "Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation."
It's a massive test for Moses. Will he take the easy way out and let God start over with him?
But Moses steps into the gap as a desperate, impassioned intercessor. He argues with God, but not on the basis of the people's innocence because they are guilty of sin. He argues on two grounds: God's reputation and God's promises. He essentially says, "Lord, why should the Egyptians say he brought them out with evil intent to kill them in the mountains? Turn from your fierce anger. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars."
And the Lord relented. He did not bring the destruction he had threatened.
Moses heads down the mountain, carrying the two tablets of the testimony, inscribed by the very finger of God. Joshua, his military commander, is waiting for him lower down the mountain. Joshua hears the noise from the camp and thinks it's the sound of war. But Moses, knowing exactly what's going on, says, "It's not the sound of victory, it's not the sound of defeat. It is the sound of singing that I hear."
When Moses approaches the camp and sees the golden calf and the dancing, his anger explodes. In a highly symbolic act, he throws the stone tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain, physically demonstrating that the covenant has been shattered.
Then he takes the golden calf, throws it into the fire, grinds it down to fine powder, scatters it on the water, and literally forces the Israelites to drink it. He confronts his brother Aaron, demanding, "What did these people do to you that you led them into such great sin?"
And Aaron's excuse is arguably the most pathetic moment of leadership failure in the text. He blames the people, saying they are prone to evil, and then he says, "So I told them, whoever has any gold jewelry, take it off. Then they gave me the gold, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf." As if the gold magically formed itself into a perfectly sculpted, Egyptian-style Apis bull without his help.
Moses sees that the people are running wild, making themselves a laughingstock to their enemies. He stands at the entrance of the camp and shouts, "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." And all the Levites rally to him. Moses commands them by the word of the Lord to strap on their swords, go back and forth through the camp, and execute the ringleaders of the idolatry, even if it's their own brother or friend. About 3,000 men fall that day. It is a brutal purging of the cancer of idolatry before it can consume the whole nation.
The next day, Moses returns to the Lord. And this is where you see the sheer depth of Moses' love for these stubborn people. He says to God, "Oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves gods of gold. But now please forgive their sin, but if not, then blot me out of the book you have written." He offers his own eternal soul as a substitute for them.
God refuses to blot Moses out, stating that whoever has sinned against him will be blotted out. But God tells Moses to lead the people onward toward the promised land. However, God says he will send an angel before them, but he himself will not go up in their midst, lest he consume them on the way, because they are a stiff-necked people.
When the people hear these distressing words, they mourn deeply, and no one puts on their ornaments. They realize that having the promised land without the presence of God is ultimately meaningless. Moses pitches his tent outside the camp, calling it the tent of meeting. When Moses enters it, the pillar of cloud descends and stands at the entrance, and the Lord speaks to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend.
Moses pleads with God, "If your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish us from all the other people on the face of the earth?" And the Lord relents, promising, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest."
And this leads to one of the most intimate, awe-inspiring moments in Scripture. Moses is emboldened. He asks God for the impossible. "Now show me your glory." God says, "I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. But you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live."
So God tells Moses to stand on a rock. As God's glory passes by, God puts Moses in a cleft in the rock, covers him with his hand, and then removes his hand so Moses can see his back, but not his face.
God commands Moses to chisel out 2 new stone tablets like the first ones. Moses goes up Mount Sinai again early in the morning, and God descends in the cloud, stands there with him, and proclaims his own nature. This is Exodus 34:6-7, one of the most quoted passages in the entire Bible.
God declares himself as the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. It is the perfect, tension-filled balance of divine character. He is profoundly, endlessly forgiving, yet he is impeccably just and will not ignore unrepentant evil.
Moses immediately bows to the ground and worships. He stays on the mountain another 40 days and 40 nights, eating no bread and drinking no water, writing the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments, on the new tablets. When he finally comes down, he doesn't realize it, but his face is actually radiant, physically glowing from speaking with God. It's so bright that Aaron and all the Israelites are afraid to come near him. Moses has to wear a veil over his face when he speaks to the people from then on, only taking it off when he goes in to speak with the Lord.
Which brings us to our final massive section, building the dwelling place. Chapters 35 through 40 detail the execution of the tabernacle blueprint Moses received on the mountain. God commands the building of a sanctuary so that he may physically dwell among them in the camp. But notice the specific condition for the offering to build it. Moses says to the congregation, "Take from among you an offering to the Lord. Whoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it."
It is strictly a free will offering. God does not want forced taxation to build his house. He asks for gold, silver, bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, fine linen, goat hair, ram skins, acacia wood, olive oil, spices, and precious stones.
And the response from the people is absolutely staggering. Every morning, the people willingly bring their bracelets, earrings, rings, and finely spun cloth. They have so much material, in fact, that the master craftsmen come to Moses and complain, "The people are bringing more than enough for doing the work the Lord commanded."
Think about that. Moses actually has to issue a camp-wide proclamation commanding the men and women to stop making offerings for the sanctuary. They had to be physically restrained from giving because they had brought too much.
It is a beautiful picture of restored relationship. Then the actual construction begins, led by 2 men named Bezaleel and Aholiab. And the text emphasizes that these aren't just naturally skilled woodworkers or jewelers. God says, "I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, with understanding, with knowledge, and with all kinds of skills."
The construction of the tabernacle is the first time in Scripture someone is said to be filled with the Spirit of God, and it's for artistic craftsmanship. They execute the intricate metalwork, stone cutting, and embroidery exactly as God commanded.
Let's break down the specific components they built because we don't just want to list furniture. The detail here is incredible and every piece means something. Let's start with the Ark of the Covenant. It's a chest made of shittim wood. For those who don't know, shittim wood is acacia wood. It's incredibly dense, gnarled, and virtually indestructible, perfect for surviving the desert. They overlay this wood entirely with pure gold, inside and out. Inside the chest go the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. On top is the mercy seat, a lid of solid, pure gold with two golden cherubim on the ends, stretching their wings over the center, facing each other.
The ark is the epicenter of the tabernacle. It represents the throne of God. The law is placed inside it, representing the standard of God's holiness. But the lid is the mercy seat, where the blood of the sacrifice will be sprinkled on the Day of Atonement. It signifies that God's mercy covers the demands of his law. This is the exact spot where God promises to meet and commune with Moses.
Moving outward, they build the table of shewbread, also out of acacia wood overlaid with pure gold. This table holds 12 loaves of bread, representing the 12 tribes of Israel, always in the presence of God. Then there's the golden candlestick, or the menorah. It's not made of wood, it's a single solid piece of beaten, pure gold. It has a central shaft and 6 branches, shaped beautifully like almond blossoms to provide light in the holy place.
The menorah is highly symbolic. Its design deliberately evokes the imagery of a tree specifically, the tree of life from the Garden of Eden. It's a reminder that dwelling in God's presence is a return to life and light. They also make the altar of incense, overlaid with gold, where sweet-smelling incense is burned daily, symbolizing the prayers of the people rising up to God. And out in the courtyard, they build the massive bronze altar of burnt offering, where the animal sacrifices are made, and the large bronze laver, a basin for the priests to wash their hands and feet before they enter the holy place, so they don't die from impurity.
The tent itself is an architectural marvel. They weave 10 massive curtains from fine twined linen in blue, purple, and scarlet, embroidered with cherubim by master craftsmen. They make the structural frames out of acacia wood overlaid with gold, resting in heavy silver sockets. And arguably, the most critical fabric piece is the veil. It's a beautiful, thick, heavy curtain of blue, purple, and scarlet, hung upon 4 pillars of gold. This veil physically separates the holy place from the most holy place, the inner room where the ark sits. It is a visual barrier stating that unholy man cannot casually stroll into the presence of a holy God.
Beyond the architecture, they also make the complex, highly symbolic priestly garments for Aaron and his sons. They weave the ephod. To picture an ephod, think of an incredibly ornate, heavy apron or vest, woven of gold wire, blue, purple, scarlet yarn, and fine linen. Attached to it is the breastpiece of judgment, a square pouch containing 4 rows of precious stones, rubies, topaz, emeralds, sapphires, diamonds, and others. Each of the 12 stones is intricately engraved with the name of one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Aaron literally bears the names of the children of Israel over his heart when he goes into the holy place to minister before the Lord.
They also make the robe of the ephod entirely of blue cloth, with little golden bells and woven pomegranates alternating all around the hem. The text says the bells are there so the sound of him is heard when he enters the holy place and when he comes out, so that he will not die. It's serious business. And finally, they make a plate of pure gold worn on Aaron's forehead like a crown, engraved with the words, "Holiness to the Lord." Everything, absolutely everything, is completed exactly as the Lord commanded. Moses inspects all the work, sees that they have done it just as God ordered, and he blesses them.
And this brings us to the ultimate climax of the book of Exodus. In chapter 40, the Lord tells Moses to set up the tabernacle on the first day of the first month of the second year since they left Egypt. Moses erects the tent, fastens the sockets, sets up the boards, puts the ark behind the heavy veil, sets the table with bread, lights the golden candlestick, burns the incense, offers the burnt offering on the bronze altar, and washes at the bronze basin. The text simply concludes, "So Moses finished the work."
And then the payoff.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this moment is the ultimate culmination of the entire Exodus narrative. The text says, "Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle." The manifestation of God's glory is so dense, so powerful, so completely overwhelming, that even Moses, the man who spoke with God face to face, the man who stood in the cleft of the rock, the man whose own face glowed with divine light, was not able to enter the tent. The creator of the universe, the great I Am, has pitched his tent in the dirt of the wilderness to physically dwell among his people. The cloud of the Lord rests upon the tabernacle by day, and fire is in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the Israelites during all their travels. When the cloud lifts, they pack up and march. When the cloud rests, they set up camp and rest.
So what does this all mean? We've covered plagues, parted seas, burning bushes, and golden calves. Speaking directly to you listening right now, let's draw on the psychological and pastoral application from our commentary sources. Where are you in bondage today? Bondage isn't always brick and mortar. It isn't always physical slavery under an Egyptian taskmaster. Bondage can be crippling fear. It can be suffocating anxiety. It can be pride, an addiction you can't shake, or bitterness you refuse to let go of. What Red Sea stands before you? What is that impossible, terrifying circumstance where you feel entirely trapped, with the enemy closing in from behind and no visible way forward?
The book of Exodus isn't just history. It provides a timeless blueprint for deliverance. We learn that God sees, He hears, He remembers, and He acts. Deliverance begins in the unseen long before we can perceive it in our reality. And sometimes the most profound act of obedience doesn't look like fighting or stressing or figuring it all out with a grand strategy. Sometimes obedience just looks like standing still, holding your peace, and watching the salvation of the Lord unfold. It's trusting the provision, like applying the blood of the Passover lamb even when it doesn't make logical sense, and walking forward only when the cloud moves.
I want to leave you with this final realization to mull over. Think about the incredible psychological and spiritual transformation of the Israelites in this text. In Exodus chapter 1, they are broken, terrified slaves. They are forced to build Pharaoh's treasure cities under the whip of cruel taskmasters, completely stripped of their agency, their dignity, and their hope. They couldn't even protect their own newborn children. But by Exodus chapter 40, just a year later, they are a free people. They are voluntarily giving up their own wealth, so much gold and silver, that Moses literally has to command them to stop. And they are using their own hands, their own newly discovered skills, to meticulously build a dwelling place for the divine. The true miracle of Exodus wasn't just getting the people out of Egypt. The true miracle was getting the mindset of slavery out of the people. It proves that true freedom isn't just the absence of a cruel master, it is freely choosing to serve the right one. Thank you for staying with this message until the end. If it helped you, even in a small way, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It truly means a lot to us and helps us continue this work. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, please share it with them. Sometimes one message reaches someone at exactly the right moment. We'd also really value your honest feedback. In the comments, tell us, what are we doing right and what should we improve for future videos? Our mission is simple. Many people never get a clear, thoughtful opportunity to learn about God in a way that feels understandable and accessible. We want to help make that opportunity available to as many people as possible across backgrounds, cultures, and beliefs. Not everyone will connect with every message. And that's okay, but everyone deserves the chance to hear one. If you believe in that mission and want to support it, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you again for being here. We'll see you in the next one.